I never thought retirement would feel like stepping into a battlefield. All my life, I had worked, saved, and dreamed of one thing: peace. Not riches, not status, just a quiet little home where I could breathe without a boss over my shoulder, or a clock telling me where to be. And when I found that lakeside cottage, tucked at the edge of a sleepy community, it felt like fate had finally smiled on me. The first morning there, I sat on the porch with a steaming cup of coffee, the air crisp and still. Birds skimmed across the lake, and the reflection of the sunrise shimmered on the water. I remember whispering to myself, "This is it. This is what I worked for." I thought I had found heaven on earth. But I was wrong, because heaven has rules. And in this neighborhood, the rules didn't belong to God. They belonged to the HOA, and more specifically, to one woman named Karen. I met her within a week of moving in. I was planting flowers by the walkway, knees in the dirt, when I heard the click of heels on gravel. I looked up to see a woman in her late 50s, sharp bob haircut, sunglasses perched on her nose, and a clipboard clutched like a weapon. She didn't introduce herself with warmth or kindness. No, she started with, "You'll want to move those. Only approved landscaping is allowed." At first, I thought she was joking. I laughed, brushing dirt off my hands, but her expression didn't move. Her lips were pursed so tight they looked painful. That's when she added, "I'm the president of the Homeowners Association. You'll be getting the handbook soon." Then she turned and walked away as if the conversation was over. I stood there frozen, the joy of my morning evaporating like mist. A handbook. Approved landscaping. I hadn't agreed to any of that when I bought the cottage. My property deed made no mention of an HOA, but Karen. She carried herself like a queen addressing a peasant. The next day, the first letter arrived. A plain white envelope slipped under my door with notice in bold letters across the top. It said my porch chairs violated community aesthetic standards. Porch chairs? Old wooden ones I had built with my own hands years ago. The letter warned of fines if I didn't remove them within 7 days. I felt a heat rise in my chest. Surely this was a mistake. I marched to Karen's house, a beige 2-story with perfectly trimmed hedges, and knocked on the door. She opened it with that same pursed lip smile. "Yes," says she asked, as though she didn't already know. I held up the letter. "What is this? I don't owe the HOA anything. My property isn't under your control." Her eyes glittered behind those dark sunglasses. "Everyone here follows the rules," she said softly. "It keeps the neighborhood beautiful. You don't want to be the one who spoils it, do you?" It wasn't a question. It was a threat wrapped in a smile. I left her porch shaking, more from anger than fear. I told myself not to worry, that she was bluffing, that common sense would win. But the following week, I woke to the sound of hammering. At first, I thought it was construction down the road, but when I stepped outside, my heart dropped. 2 men were erecting a fence. Not along Karen's yard, not around community property. No, the fence stretched right across the edge of my driveway, cutting off the path to my cottage. I stormed over. "What do you think you're doing?" The workers shrugged, pointing toward Karen, who stood on the sidewalk with her clipboard, supervising like a general in battle. She didn't even look at me when she said, "You're parking too close to the easement." The board voted, the fence stays. My blood boiled. "Board? I never joined your board. This is my property, and you have no right." She finally turned, her head giving me a smile so smug it could curdle milk. "You'll see. Everyone follows the rules here. Sooner or later, you will too." Her words echoed in my ears long after the fence went up. It was tall, ugly, and out of place, a wooden wall that stood between me and the peace I had earned. That night, I sat on my porch, staring at it, unable to taste the coffee in my hands. The neighbors walked by, whispering, watching. Some shook their heads with pity, others with smug amusement. Not one of them spoke up. And that's when I realized I wasn't just fighting Karen. I was fighting a whole system built to control, squeeze, to suffocate anyone who dared to live freely. I wanted to believe it would end there, that the fence was the worst of it. But deep inside, I knew this was just the opening move. Karen wasn't satisfied with winning small battles. She wanted control, and if I didn't stop her, she'd take everything: my land, my peace, maybe even my home. That night, as I sat awake listening to the crickets, I made a promise to myself. They had declared war on me. I wasn't going to lose. I woke the next morning with a tightness in my chest, the kind that only comes when you know something isn't right, but can't fix it overnight. I thought maybe I'd dreamed the whole thing. Maybe the fence across my driveway was just a nightmare. But when I stepped outside, there it was, ugly tall, and blocking me in like I was some trespasser on my own land. I could have torn it down right then, but something in me told me to wait. I wanted to be smart about this, not reckless. Sides. Karen was already waiting across the street, coffee mug in one hand, clipboard in the other, watching me like a hawk. That smug smile stretched across her face the second our eyes met. She wanted me to lose my temper. She wanted me to give her ammunition. So instead, I forced a smile and waved. That seemed to irritate her more than if I'd shouted. But her games didn't stop there. Later that week, I went into town for groceries. When I came back, I noticed a bright yellow slip pinned to my front door. A violation notice. My mailbox, according to the HOA, was non-standard. I stood there staring at it, my hands trembling. That mailbox had been there long before Karen. Long before the HOA, it was weathered and old, sure. But it had character. Now they wanted it gone. I crumpled the paper in my fist and stormed inside. This wasn't about a mailbox or porch chairs or flower beds. It was about power. Karen wanted to break me down piece by piece until I either bowed to her or packed up and left. And the worst part, neighbors played along. At first, they'd been friendly smiles, handshakes, even a pie or two when I first moved in. But after the fence went up, their attitudes shifted. People who once waved now turned their heads. Conversations went quiet when I walked by. One man, Bill, who lived 2 doors down, actually stopped me on the street and said, "Look, just pay the dues and follow the rules. It's easier that way." Easier for who? For Karen. For the people too afraid to stand up to her. His words only made my resolve harden. The next Saturday, the HOA held one of their meetings in the community hall. I decided to go, partly to defend myself, partly to see who exactly I was up against. The hall smelled of stale coffee and lemon cleaner. Dozens of neighbors filled the folding chairs, chatting quietly until Karen walked in. The room fell silent the moment she stepped up to the podium, clipboard in hand like it was some royal decree. She started rattling off violations. The neighborhood trash cans left out too long unapproved paint colors, lawn ornaments. That didn't meet standards. Each time she paused just long enough to let the shame sink in. People nodded, some even apologized out loud. It was like watching subjects bow to a queen. Then she called my name. "Mr. Anderson," she said. Her voice smooth as honey but sharp as glass. "You continue to disregard community standards. Unauthorized garden decorations, an unapproved mailbox, parking too close to the easement. The board has voted to fine you." A murmur rippled through the room. All eyes turned to me. I stood slowly, my legs trembling but my voice steady. "I didn't sign up for this HOA. My deed is free of your association. You have no authority over me." Karen's smile widened. "Everyone here follows the rules. It's what keeps our neighborhood safe and beautiful." I clenched my fists. "Safe? You locked me out of my own driveway. Beautiful. You built a fence that makes my home look like a prison? That's not beauty. That's control." The room went quiet. Some faces looked sympathetic, others nervous. But Karen didn't flinch. She leaned forward and said, "If you don't like it here, Mr. Anderson, perhaps this isn't the right community for you." The message was clear. Leave or be crushed. I left the hall with my head spinning. My neighbors had sat there like sheep, watching as Karen tried to strip me of my dignity. No one spoke up. Not one voice defended me. That night, I sat on my porch, staring at the lake. The fence blocked part of my view, but beyond it, the water shimmered under the moonlight, reminding me why I had chosen this place. I wasn't going to let her steal that from me. Still, doubt crept in. How far was Karen willing to go? She could put up a fence across my driveway. What was next? Would she try to seize part of my land? Fine me until I couldn't afford to. Stay. The thought of losing my hard-earned peace made my chest ache. But as I sat there, I realized something important. Karen thrived on fear. That's how she controlled the neighbors. That's how she kept her power. I wanted to survive here. I couldn't let fear run me. So I made myself a promise. I wasn't going anywhere. I'd fight her every step of the way, no matter how. Dirty the battle got, because this cottage wasn't just a house. It was my freedom. And if Karen thought she could take it from me, she was about to learn I wasn't as easy to break as the others. What I didn't know then was just how far she was willing to push me or how far I'd go to push back. After that HOA meeting, something inside me shifted. I realized Karen wasn't just trying to enforce rules. She was testing how far she could push me. And every time I resisted, she pushed harder. The next week started with more letters. Said my porch light was too bright. Another claimed the paint on my shutters was not within community standards. Each one carried a fine, and each fine grew larger. I ignored them, knowing they had no legal ground over me. But ignoring them didn't make them stop it, made them angrier. On a Tuesday evening, I came home from town with groceries. Nearly dark, and the crickets were starting to sing. But when I turned into my driveway, my headlights hit something metallic. I slammed on the brakes. A new gate. Not just a fence, this time a full metal gate with a padlock and a chain stretching across the driveway like the bars of a prison. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as my heart began to pound. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was theft. They had taken away my access to my own home. I got out of the car, shaking with fury, and rattled the chain. It clanged loudly in the night. I could see the outline of my cottage just beyond the barrier, lights glowing warmly through the windows. My home so close but out of reach. Need a key? I spun around. Karen stood at the edge of the road, arms crossed. That same smug smile plastered on her face. She held a small silver key between her fingers, letting it dangle like bait. What the hell is this? I shouted. Community security, she said smoothly. Too many outsiders coming through lately. We decided it was best to restrict access. I am a resident, I snapped. This is my property. Can't keep me out. She tilted her head. All you have to do is register with the HOA, pay your dues, and agree to the rules. Then you'll get your key. The audacity of her. Words stunned me into silence. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wanted me under her thumb, and she was willing to hold my home hostage until I bent. I took a step closer, my voice low. That gate comes down tomorrow, or I'll take it down myself. Her smile faltered, just for a second, then returned. Do that, and the sheriff will hear about it. You don't want to record, do you? She turned and walked away, swinging the key like a trophy. I stood there in the dark, my groceries forgotten, rage burning so hot it felt like fire in my chest. For a long time, I just stared at that gate, the padlock gleaming in the moonlight. I wanted to smash it, to tear it out of the ground, to scream until the whole neighborhood heard me. But I knew Karen had laid this trap carefully. If I lashed out, she'd twist it against me. So instead, I drove back into town and checked into the cheapest motel I could find. I barely slept. All night, my mind churned with anger and disbelief. How could this happen? How could a group of neighbors, led by one power-hungry woman, strip me of something so basic, the right to enter my own home? The next morning, I went straight to the sheriff's office. laid everything out, the letters, the fence, now the locked gate. The deputy listened politely, nodding here and there, then leaned back with a sigh. "Look," he said, "this sounds like a civil matter. Property disputes aren't something we can get involved in unless it escalates." Escalates. I barked. "I've been locked out of my own damn house. What more needs to happen?" He raised his hands. "File a complaint with the county. Take it to court. That's your best option. Court lawyers, months of waiting." And meanwhile, Karen would keep tightening the noose. I walked out of that office feeling more alone than ever. No law was coming. To save me, no neighbor would stand with me. 'Twas me against them. When I finally returned to the cottage, the gate still stood, mocking me. I stood there staring at it, groceries spoiling in my trunk, when I noticed something strange. A man in a baseball cap was standing a few houses down, watching me. When our eyes met, he quickly turned and walked away. It wasn't the first time I'd noticed it either. People were watching me constantly, now peeking through curtains, slowing their steps when they passed. It was as if the whole neighborhood had turned into Karen's army, keeping tabs on me. That night, I sat in my car just outside the gate, staring at my cottage. I could see the light in the living room, shadows dancing against the walls. It broke me inside to know I couldn't even sleep in my own bed. I clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles went white and whispered to myself, "They think they've won. They think they can scare me out. But they don't know who they're dealing with." Because that night, as the crickets sang and the gate glinted under the moonlight, I decided something. I wasn't going to wait for the county. I wasn't going to beg for the sheriff's help. If Karen wanted to play dirty, I'd go deeper, and soon. I'd find the one thing that could turn all of this around, their weakness. I don't know how many nights I slept in my car outside that gate, staring at my own home like it was a museum. Peace I couldn't touch. Too many. Each night the anger burned hotter, eating away at the peace I had once felt when I bought the cottage. Every time I saw Karen's smug face parading down the street, clipboard tucked under her arm like a scepter, I felt the fire climb higher. But anger alone wasn't enough. I needed a weapon. That thought gnawed at me until one morning, after another sleepless night, I drove straight to the county records office. It was a dull gray building with flickering fluorescent lights, the kind of place where time seemed to move slower. The clerk behind the counter barely looked up when I asked for property maps of the neighborhood. She slid a stack of dusty files across the counter, and I carried them to a corner table. For hours, I pored over deeds, surveys, and boundary lines, tracing every detail with my finger. At first, nothing stood out. The HOA owned the community center, the common park, a few strips of land here and there. But then I noticed something odd. The road dot the single stretch of asphalt that connected all the cottages, including mine, to the main highway. It was outlined in bold ink on the map, but when I checked the ownership record, my breath caught. The HOA didn't own it. In fact, no one did. The road had been left in limbo years ago after the original developer went bankrupt. The county had marked it as private, not maintained by public funds, and listed it as available for purchase. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. If I bought that road, the entire neighborhood, including Karen, would depend on me to get in or out. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something sharp cut through the fog of anger. Hope. But that hope came with fear, too. Was it even possible? Could a retiree like me actually pull this off? What if Karen found out before I did? I shoved the doubt aside. This was my chance, maybe my only chance, to flip the script. I left the office that day with a copy of the paperwork tucked under my arm, gripping it like it was a treasure map. The sunlight outside felt different, warmer, almost conspiratorial. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. When I got back to the neighborhood, Karen was out front watering her roses, her nose high in the air as if she owned the soil itself. She spotted me and smirked, clearly expecting me to beg for a key to the gate. But this time, I didn't take the bait. I just gave her a nod and walked past, hiding the storm that was quietly forming inside me. That night, I spread the documents across my kitchen table. I studied every word, every clause, every legal phrase I could barely understand. The more I read, the more certain I became. If I filed the paperwork and paid the fees, the road was mine. Not the HOAs, not Karen's, mine. But the excitement didn't erase the fear. What if the neighbors turned on me even harder? What if the HOA tried to fight it in court? And most of all, what if I became exactly what I despised, a ruler, like Karen, lording control over everyone else? I sat there staring at the papers, wrestling with the choice. My cottage was supposed to be a place of freedom, not a battleground. But freedom meant nothing if I let them steal it. And then, as if fate wanted to make the decision for me, something happened that sealed it. Around midnight, headlights flashed across my window. I stepped outside and saw a pickup truck idling near the gate. Two men I didn't recognize jumped out and started hammering a new sign into the ground. I walked closer, heart racing, and read the words by the glow of their flashlight. Private road, HOA members only. I froze. My hands shook as I clenched them into fists. They were staking a claim they didn't own, marking territory like wolves. Karen was tightening her grip, spreading her lies into metal and wood, daring me to fight. And right then, I knew. I wasn't just going to fight. I was going to win. The next morning, I drove back to the county office and signed the paperwork. My hand didn't tremble once as I wrote my name across the line. By the time I walked out, the road, the lifeline of that neighborhood, was legally mine. Driving back, I passed Karen on her morning walk. She gave me that same smug smile she always wore. But this time, I smiled back because she didn't. Know that the ground beneath her feet had already shifted. The war wasn't over. But the battlefield had just changed. The morning after I signed the paperwork, the air felt different. It wasn't just another day in Karen's kingdom. No, the balance of power had shifted, and I was the only one who knew it. For the first time in weeks, I felt lighter, almost amused, watching the neighbors scurry about their routines while completely unaware that every step they took depended on me now. But I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I wanted the reveal to sting, to rattle Karen's little empire the way she had rattled mine. It didn't take long for the HOA to hand me the perfect stage. 2 days later, a notice was taped to my gate. Mandatory HOA meeting, attendance required. The word required made me laugh out loud. I had never been part of their HOA, but they still demanded my presence like I was one of their subjects. This time, I decided to go not as their victim, but as their reckoning. The community hall was packed, buzzing with tension. Neighbors sat shoulder to shoulder on folding chairs, whispering nervously. Karen stood at the front, clipboard pressed to her chest, her mouth curled into that self-satisfied smile. She looked like a queen about to hand down sentences. I slipped into the back row, unnoticed at first. But when Karen's eyes finally landed on me, I saw a flicker of irritation flash across her face. She cleared her throat and began. "As you all know," she announced, "our community thrives when everyone cooperates and respects the rules. Unfortunately, one resident continues to disrupt our harmony." Her gaze slid toward me like a knife. "We've had reports of violations, refusal to pay dues, and open hostility toward the board." A low murmur spread through the room. People turned in their seats, some glaring, some avoiding my eyes altogether. Karen lifted a sheet of paper. "The board has voted to increase the fines. And if this behavior continues, we'll be forced to pursue legal action. No one is above the rules." That was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. I stood up slowly, letting the chair scrape against the floor. Every head turned. My heart was pounding, but my voice was calm. "You know what, Karen? You're absolutely right. No one is above the rules." Her smile widened, thinking she had one. I'm glad you finally see reason. I took a step forward, holding up a folded document. But here's the thing, these aren't your rules anymore. It's not when it comes to the one thing that keeps this neighborhood alive. A ripple of confusion spread across the room. Karen's smile faltered. What are you talking about? I unfolded the papers slowly, savoring the moment. The road. The only road that leads in and out of this community. As of yesterday, it belongs to me. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, shouts. People twisted in their seats, demanding answers. Karen slammed her clipboard against the podium. That's impossible. The road is HOA property. I held up the deed, the county seal gleaming under the fluorescent lights. No, Karen, it never was. And now it's legally mine. Every car. You drive every truck that delivers your packages. Every guest you invite will be driving on my road. The silence that followed was thick, electric. Neighbors who had sneered at me before now stared in shock, their mouths hanging open. A few even looked relieved. Karen, though she turned red. This is outrageous, she shouted. Can't just, oh, but I can. I cut in, my voice sharp. For weeks, you fined me, fenced me in, even locked me out of my own home, and no one stood up, not one of you. I let my eyes sweep the room. But now the tables have turned. And if you think I'm going to roll over, you don't know me at all. The whispers grew louder, people leaning into one another, their loyalty starting to crack. A man in the front row finally spoke up. Is this true? Do you really own the road? I nodded, holding up the papers again. Every inch of it. And here's how it's going to be. No more harassment, no more fines, no more fences. You want peace? You'll leave me in peace. It's because the day you don't. I paused, letting the suspense hang in the air. It's the day I decide who gets to drive home and who doesn't. The room fell silent. Even Karen had no words. Her face was pale now, her fingers gripping the edge of the podium so tight I thought she might snap it. I turned and walked out without another word, leaving the chaos behind me. The murmurs rose into a storm as the door closed. My hands were still trembling. But inside, I felt something I hadn't felt since the day I bought my cottage control. That night, sat on my porch with my coffee, staring out at the lake. The fence was still there, the gates still locked, but they no longer mattered. It's because I held something far stronger than keys or chains. I held the ground beneath their feet, and deep down I knew Karen wouldn't give up easily. She'd come back swinging. But this time, the fight wouldn't be one-sided. This time, I had the upper hand. I thought the silence after that meeting would last longer. For a brief moment, I believed the neighbors might let it sink in that I held the road and therefore their lives in my hands. But silence was never Karen's style. She thrived on noise, on control, on keeping everyone looking in her direction. 2 days later, I woke up to find a letter stuffed under my gate. It wasn't folded neatly, not slipped into an envelope, just a crumpled sheet with words scrawled across it in red marker. This isn't over. You'll regret crossing us. No name, no signature. But I didn't need one. Karen. I crumpled the paper in my fist, my jaw tight. The game had shifted, but she wasn't backing down. She was gearing up for war. And sure enough, the retaliation began. That afternoon, I tried to have groceries delivered. The driver called me, flustered. Sorry, ma'am, some people out here are telling me I can't use this road. Said I'll get fined if I do. I could hear voices shouting in the background, neighbors crowding him, waving their arms like gatekeepers. My hands shook with anger. You tell them this road is private property. And if they have a problem with that, they can call the sheriff. The groceries arrived, but the message was clear. Karen wasn't going to challenge me directly. She was going to use everyone else as her shield, pushing them to fight battles she couldn't win on her own. By the end of the week, things escalated. Flyers showed up in mailboxes mine included claiming I was extorting the neighborhood, threatening to cut off access to families and children. Lies twisted just enough to stir fear. I could almost hear Karen's voice in every line, dripping with false concern. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, I stood at my fence and watched groups of neighbors gathering in their yards. Their eyes weren't just curious anymore, they were hostile. Some muttered under their breath when I passed. Others didn't bother hiding their glares. Karen had done what she did best. She'd turned me into the villain of her story. But I wasn't about to let her rewrite the truth. I called a meeting. Not an HOA meeting, my meeting, on the very road that belonged to me. I posted notices at every corner, inviting the neighbors to hear my side. Most ignored me. Some tore the papers down. But on the night I chose, a small crowd showed up anyway. Curiosity outweighing their loyalty to Karen. I stood on the gravel, the deed tucked in my pocket, my heart pounding as the group circled me. Karen was there, of course, standing front and center, arms crossed, lips curled into a smug grin. "You've all heard her lies," she said, her voice carrying like she was on a stage. "She thinks she can own us, control us." She's turned herself into a tyrant. I took a deep breath, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You want the truth? Here it is. I never wanted this fight. I never asked for fines or fences or locked gates. All I wanted was peace in my own home. Karen made sure I never got it." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some eyes softened, but Karen pounced before I could continue. "Peace," she sneered. "Is that what you call threatening to cut off families from their homes? What happens if she decides tomorrow you can't drive to work, or your kids can't ride the bus? Are you willing to gamble your lives on her mood swings?" Gasps rippled. Through the group, fear spread fast, faster than truth ever could. I clenched my fists. She was twisting everything, painting me as a monster. I pulled the deed from my pocket, holding it high. "This road is mine." That's not a threat. It's a fact. But listen carefully. I've never once said I'd keep anyone from their homes. I don't want control, I want fairness. I don't want Karen to stop bullying people into believing her lies. Karen's eyes flashed. "You're bluffing. You don't have the guts to go through with it." I stepped closer, my voice low but firm. "Try me." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The neighbors glanced between us, torn, uncertain. The air was thick with tension. It's the kind that hums under your skin like static before a storm. Then Karen smiled a thin, dangerous smile. "You'll regret this," she whispered, loud enough for only me to hear. The crowd dispersed slowly, whispers chasing them down the road. Some looked shaken, others looked afraid. But Karen's confidence hadn't wavered, and that scared me. More than anything, because I realized then she wasn't just fighting for power, she was fighting for survival. Losing this battle would mean losing everything she'd built, every ounce of control she had over these people. And she wasn't the type to go down quietly. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me sit up. Every shadow outside felt like a threat. My phone buzzed with messages and known numbers sending words like monster and get out. The war wasn't coming. It had already started. And deep down, I knew the next move Karen made wouldn't just be words or flyers. It would be something bigger, something meant to break me once and for all. I stared out my window at the road, the one piece of ground that gave me strength. Night was still, but in my chest, a storm was building. The climax was close. I could feel it in my bones. I should have known Karen wouldn't wait long. She thrived on spectacle, on grand gestures that left no room for doubt about who was in control. But even then, I wasn't prepared for the way she struck. It was a Saturday morning, quiet and gray, the kind of day when the world feels heavy. I'd just poured my coffee when I heard the noise engine's voices, the sound of metal clanging. I went to the window and my stomach dropped. They were building a gate, not at the entrance where the road met the highway. Not in front of their own homes. No, they were building it across my driveway. Karen stood there like a queen directing her soldiers. clipboard in hand, pointing where she wanted posts driven into the ground. Two men drilled into the gravel, while others hauled fencing panels from the back of a truck. Neighbors watched from their lawns, some cheering, some silent, all complicit. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my mug. Rage flared in my chest, but beneath it fear coiled tight. If they finished, I'd be trapped. My home cut off. My life locked behind bars I never agreed to. I stormed outside, my voice cutting through the chaos. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Karen turned slowly, her smile cool and sharp. "Protecting the neighborhood. Since you like playing owner, we've decided to put protections in place. You can come and go." She gestured to a small side gate, padlocked and flimsy, but not without approval. Approval from her. I could barely breathe. This is my land. "That gate doesn't just block MIT, blocks you too." She raised her chin, defiant. "Not if we all agree it's necessary." Democracy. Remember? Majority rules. My blood went cold. She wasn't just ignoring the law, she was rewriting it in real time, molding the neighbors into an army with one voice. Her voice. I pulled a deed from my pocket, had become my weapon, my shield. "This paper says otherwise. You build that gate. You're trespassing. Every single one of you." The workers hesitated, glancing at each other. But Karen snapped her fingers and they kept drilling. That was when something inside me snapped. Months of whispers, fines, threats, and sleepless nights, all of it, surged through me in a wave. I stepped forward, yanking the power drill from one man's hands and tossing it aside. "Enough." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's face hardened. "You're out of control," she hissed. "This is exactly why we need the gate. Keep people like you from terrorizing this neighborhood." Her words cut deeper than I wanted to admit, because in that moment, with my heart pounding and my voice shaking, I probably did look like a madwoman defending a strip of gravel no one else cared about. But I couldn't back down. Not now. I took a breath, my voice low but steady. "This road is mine, and if you keep pushing me, you'll regret it." Something flickered in her eyes, then not fear, but challenge. She wanted me to lose it. She wanted me to be the villain, and maybe I was about to give her exactly what she wanted before I could move. Headlights cut through the tension. A sheriff's cruiser rolled up, tires crunching on gravel. Relief surged through me until I saw Karen's triumphant smile. She'd called them. She wanted this. The deputy stepped out, hand resting near his belt. "Morning, folks. Got a call about a disturbance." Karen jumped in, all sugar and sympathy. "Officer, thank goodness you're here. She's threatening us. She's trying to stop us from protecting our children." The crowd nodded, murmuring. "Agreement." My throat tightened. It was dozens of voices against mine. I forced myself to stay calm, holding out the deed like a lifeline. "This is my property. They're trespassing, building on my land without permission. You can see for yourself." The deputy frowned, taking the paper, scanning it slowly. The silence stretched. My heart hammered. Finally, he looked up. "Ma'am," he turned to Karen. "She's right. This road belongs to her. You can't build here without her consent." The world seemed to tilt. The crowd erupted, shouts, protests, disbelief. Karen's face flushed crimson, her mask cracking for the first. "Tom, she's lying." Karen shrieked. "She forged it." "You can't trust her?" But the deputy shook his head, calm and steady. "If you have a dispute, take it to court. But as of now, this construction stops." The workers froze. Slowly, hesitantly, they lowered their tools. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt relief. But as Karen's eyes met mine across the chaos, I didn't see defeat. I saw fire, rage, the kind of fury that doesn't fade, it festers. She leaned close as the deputy ordered her to disperse. Her voice was a whisper meant only for me. "You may have one today, but this isn't over. I'll burn everything you love before I let you win." Her words sent a chill straight through my bones. As the neighbors scattered, some glaring, some shaken, I stood alone on the gravel, clutching the deed like a lifeline. I'd won the battle, but the war had only grown darker. And deep inside, I knew Karen's next move wouldn't be legal or public or anything I could prepare for. It would be personal, brutal. The storm had broken, but the flood was still coming. After the sheriff left that day, silence wrapped around the neighborhood like smoke after a fire. But I knew better than to mistake it for peace. Karen's eyes had said everything her lips didn't. She wasn't finished. For weeks, I lived in a strange kind of tension, half victory, half dread. I'd walk outside and feel curtains shift, neighbors' whispers following me like shadows. The road lay quiet, unclaimed, untouched. But every time my tires crunched over the gravel, I wondered how long it would last. Then came the night the storm broke for good. It was late, close to midnight. I'd fallen asleep on the couch when I woke to the sound of footsteps outside, slow, deliberate. My stomach knotted. I crept to the window, and in the dim glow of the porch light, I saw her. Karen. She stood at the edge of my driveway, holding something metallic in her hand. My heart pounded. Was it a tool? A weapon? I couldn't tell. But her face told me everything. She wasn't here to negotiate. I opened the door before fear could chain me down. "What are you doing on my property?" Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp as glass, claiming what's ours. She raised the crowbar, pointing it at the road. "You think a piece of paper makes this yours? You don't belong here. You never did." For the first time, I saw it clearly. This wasn't about bylaws or fences or even power. It was about control, about Karen's need to bend everyone and everything to her will. And I was the one person she couldn't break. "I belong." "I," said my voice, steady though my hands trembled. "And you're trespassing." She stepped closer, crowbar glinting under the light. "Then stop me." I could have backed away. I could have called the sheriff again, hidden inside my walls, waited for help. But something inside me shifted. I was done hiding, done waiting for someone else to fight battles on my behalf. I picked up my phone, thumb hovering over the emergency number. "You take one more step, and this time it won't be a warning. This time you'll answer for everything." For a heartbeat. Neither of us moved. The air between us buzzed with the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. Then, slowly, she lowered the crowbar. Her eyes burned with hatred. But behind it, just for a flicker, I saw something else. Fear. Without another word, she turned and walked back into the dark. The next morning, I filed for a restraining order. By then, the sheriff had already heard enough complaints from both sides to know the pattern. When he read my statement, every fence, every threat, every night I couldn't sleep, he finally understood. Karen fought, of course. She showed up in court with her polished smile, her papers, her stories about neighborhood safety. But when the judge read my deed aloud, when witnesses admitted under oath that she'd tried to build that gate on my land, the tide turned. The order was granted, and just like that, Karen's power cracked. She still had her loyal followers, still muttered about me at meetings I refused to attend. But the threats stopped. The late-night visits ended. The road stayed mine. It should have felt like triumph. In some ways, it did. I'd stood my ground. I hadn't let her win. But the victory came with scars on the road, on the neighborhood, and on me. I learned that people will show you who they really are when control is at stake. That not every battle is about right or wrong. Sometimes it's about pride, fear, and the desperate need to dominate. And I learned that silence, though tempting, can be dangerous. If you don't stand up, someone like Karen will decide for you. Now, when I drive down that gravel road, I see more than just stones and dust. I see the nights I sat awake wondering if I'd lose everything. I see the neighbors who chose sides, the sheriff who finally listened, the judge's gavel striking the truth into the record. Most of all, I see myself shaking but unbroken, terrified but unyielding. Karen still lives a few houses down. We don't speak. When we pass each other, it's like two storms brushing by, lightning in our eyes, thunder in our silence. But I don't fear her anymore. She tried to cage me, and I refused to be caged. The road taught me something I'll never forget. Sometimes you can't wait for peace to come. Sometimes you have to claim it, protect it, stand in the middle of it with every ounce of strength you have, and say, "This is mine." And if that means standing alone, then so be it, because I'd rather stand alone on solid ground than bow in a crowd built on lies.